This is Erik McKinney here, joined by Scott Schrader. And Scott, let's get right into USC's absolutely gigantic recruiting weekend here in the middle of June. And I want you to maybe start by taking us back a little bit. Talk us through kind of your reaction, your thought to when you first started hearing about how USC is going to put this monster weekend together in the middle of June, how that came about, and kind of really the momentum that USC was able to build coming into this weekend.
Yeah, they started to add to the list for this weekend, quite some time ago. And there were two here, and then they'd add one more, and they'd add a couple. But I don't remember what the number was last month when I was at Cypress Woods High School here in Houston, Texas, seeing Terrence Green. And after practice, we went inside and we started our interview, and he was telling me that the number could be as many as 30. And so I think at that time, the list was maybe around 10 or something like that. It's like 30. So I hit somebody up to ask him, like, is this sound like 30 numbers sound right? And it was confirmed that it could possibly be that high. And, my thinking is, this is something they could not have pulled off last year. They just did not have enough people to be able to handle this. So I know they brought in a lot of interns and a lot of people to help out in that regard. The support staff is far bigger. I think the difference maker, I don't just think, I know the difference maker is they have Annie Hansen this year. And, this was a similar visit to what they did at Oklahoma a year ago. Eric Nelson, Malachi's dad, was telling me they had roughly like 20 official visitors last year at their barbecue. I don't know how many unofficial visitors as well, which USC did not have going for them on this weekend. But, I was just thinking that, we were asked, Erik, all the time, how is USC going to manage this? And my answer was always Miss Annie. But as it turns out, this staff is all in too. And you have to be, and it was every little detail is as important as anything else that they do. So, I started to realize fully how big this weekend was going to be probably a month ago.
And there is a worry when you hear about this many official visitors. I mean, you've got twice as many official visitors as you do coaches on the staff. I mean, how do you split time? How do you do all that? And the number ended up being 24, and we'll hit on some names and some of the important ones. But boy, didn't seem at all like this staff was stretched. Like this is a group in place right now with a plan on how to attack this, and it seems like absolutely hit it out of the park. At this point in the year, the most important recruiting weekend of this calendar for USC. I mean, it seems like you're not going to get a weekend, and this is the week before signing day, looking at December, looking into January, February. This is the weekend I think that probably sets the tone and determines what this class ends up looking like. I think at the end of it.
Well, absolutely. When you have 24 guys that are coming in, that's a large chunk of the guys that you plan on bringing in every year. They were here in 1 week end. But I just think that when you have everything that is organized, as detailed as it is, down to where, you need to be here at this particular time with these people in this location, and then you are leaving at 6:12 p.m. and you're going to be leaving the next station at 6:21 p.m. Whatever it might be, but that's kind of like how it was planned out. Not everybody arrived exactly at the same time. There were some that arrived in the morning on Friday, some that arrived, in the late afternoon, early evening on Friday. So, there's still a group of guys that are at Nobu right now that are finishing up their official visit. So yeah, it's hard to imagine being able to pull something like this off, but like you're saying, all the feedback I've gotten, there's been zero issues.
And we'll go. Let's start on the offensive side of the recruits. Malachi Nelson, committed quarterback. He's a guy that you want at USC absolutely as much as possible. He puts that kind of recruiting leader on his shoulders, and he does a lot of work. A couple other commits there: Zachariah Branch, Makai Lemon, wide receivers. That they'll talk to anybody and push SC as much as anybody there.
Sure.
The two committed running backs, you had a couple big time tight ends, Deuce Robinson and Walker Lyons on campus, and then the offensive linemen. I think that's what USC fans want to hear about, the offensive linemen, the guys that were there, how they did. To me, that group that they had there, and this is not discounting the tight ends, the running backs, the quarterback, but boy, those offensive linemen, that group could eventually be, your class. I think a lot of the eventual committed signees could come from this group that was on campus this weekend.
Yeah, having Malachi here, when he told me a few weeks back, 2-3 weeks ago, that he and Mackay told me that they were going to take their official with Zachariah Branch. Malachi just said this is the weekend because it's going to be a working weekend. So yes, you have those guys here. They're established. They're committed. They're not going anywhere. There's a lot of talk about Zachariah Branch taking an official visit to Texas A&M. Unless Lincoln Riley leaves USC, Zachariah Branch is not going to Texas A&M. But so you had an extremely talented group of people that know Malachi. Everybody knows Malachi's name. Everybody, I think everybody knows Zachariah Branch. In fact, Zachariah might talk to more of these guys than Malachi does, to be honest with you. So, you have those guys. And let's not forget, we'll get to defensive players later, but Braxton Myers was also a big person to have on campus this week with 7, I think it ended up being 7 other Texans that were 7 or 8. I forget what the total number, with Terrence Green pulling, I think it was 7 other Texans. And on top of that, he's on the same 7-on-7 team as Anthony Hill, 5-star linebacker from Denton, Texas. He knows Trey Wilson, defensive lineman from Garland, Texas, extremely well. And he also knows Marcus Deal. And so it was kind of big having the fellow Texan on board as well. But yeah, the offensive players that were here with the offensive linemen, and as it stands right now with the visit concluded for most of these guys, it kind of looks like USC's feeling pretty good with about 5 of the guys that showed up.
I mean, you talk about names: Francis Marigola, Lucas Simmons, Marquis Steele, Micah Banuelos, and Alani Noah. That's a good group. Does SC? I mean, I know it's still early, and in terms of predictions of that group, kind of who do you feel good about at this point, and who maybe could USC end up with, if they continue to push for that, just that group of 5?
Yeah, well, with Marcus Deal too, they're really recruiting him as a defensive lineman, but they do like him a lot as an offensive lineman, so they're really not quite sure where he would go. I just know Marcus prefers to play on the defensive side of the ball.
And I guess we can throw Amos Talalay in there too. He's a guy that could play both sides, just big bodies that you want to figure out.
But he's definitely one of Sean Newell's guys. But have Alani Noah. We put a prediction in for him. He's a 3-star rated guy from Grant High School in Sacramento, California, and USC absolutely loves him. Like, he is as high on their board as almost anybody other than Francis, Maui Noah. So, I haven't seen him play yet, but I'm going to take the word for people that have, and he's not a guy that's going to come in and maybe make a huge impact immediately, but he's a guy that they really, really love. And Francis from IMG Academy, he's a guy that's just leaving USC, and they're feeling pretty darn good with him. It kind of feels like right now it's going to shake up to be a USC versus Alabama battle, but he does still have a Tennessee visit, I believe, next weekend, right, Erik? The 24th? Yeah. He has 2 visits, right? Miami and Tennessee.
I mean, right? that guy is living on an airplane right now. It is 5 visits within, I think, 2 weeks. This is a chaotic time for him, and USC really needed to make an impression to stand out, because I believe they're the 3rd visit of 5, all in kind of quick succession. So you got to really stand out for him.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But Lucas Simmons from Clearwater, Florida. I think it kind of was down to Florida State and USC. So he needed to be wowed this weekend. We haven't had any feedback on him yet, but he needed to be wowed with the family feel. And I based on everything I've seen and heard, the USC definitely put the family feel into this massive weekend that they had. Micah Banuelos, you've talked to him. I haven't, but I've talked to his coach. I've talked to the people that know him really well. Another, I think, underrated offensive lineman. I know you and I really love this film. Great kid, comes from a great program, and he's another guy that USC's feeling really, really good about. after his visit. So I think we'll talk to him maybe later tonight or tomorrow. So get some feedback on how his visit went. But again, Marcus Deal is potentially an offensive lineman. I think realistically he's going to be a defensive guy for him if he would choose USC.
And I love that mix of guys that you see projecting up and needing a couple years. And also you've got, the big 5-star guy that you can throw out there right now. I think that the way USC kind of needs offensive linemen, that's it. You need guys to make an impact right away, and you need to build that depth with guys that can play later.
I just want to add this, Erik. We want to add that Cortland Ford, we had the Texas theme going earlier in our conversation. Cortland Ford hosted Marcus Deal, so he was involved in this weekend as well. So it was a nice little Texas homecoming in Southern California.
I like Zion Branch being able to host his brother. That's got to be. I mean, you look at the Branch family. The parents celebrate their wedding anniversary during the trip. It's Father's Day on Sunday. You've got the son hosting the brother. The brothers hosting. That what a weekend! I mean, to be able to have all those things come together. Defensively, I think the guys that
I'm going to hit on the wide receivers quick though.
Yes,
we definitely need to hit on Jalen Hale.
Yeah,
and Jalen Hale was a guy that USC was up until 2 weeks ago weren't even sure that he was going to take this visit. They weren't really sure how they stood with him. Felt like they were a long shot, but he makes it out here, and based off what we're hearing, they have a really, really good shot at him too. So I just wanted to make sure that we added that one in.
And I think the tight end, I mean, why stop there? The tight ends, Deuce Robinson, Walker Lyons.
Yes.
It seems like though, if you can get those two guys, I know there's other targets and you always want to make sure that you've got kind of irons in the fire at those two spots or with multiple, guys possibly coming in. But boy, Deuce Robinson's a guy that is unbelievable. If he's in the class, I think you're good with whoever kind of the second tight end ends up being.
Yeah. And those two guys that were here, I put in a prediction for Deuce Robinson on May 3rd or something like that. And we did submit one for Walker Lyons tonight. So, but Walker at the earliest will be playing in 2024 because of his LDS mission.
And Cade Eldridge is a guy that SC has shown a bunch of interest in as a potential guy there that wouldn't be, a couple years down the line too. So again, that spot, they're hitting that spot, hard with going after some talented guys. And so defensively, I think the names that stand out, I like that you hit Braxton Myers already and mentioned Anthony Hill as that's right between him and Tackett Curtis, who we saw come in last week. Those are the linebackers. Those are the linebackers that USC, needs to go out and get nationally and feels like they're, definitely in the mix at this point. I think Mateo is probably the guy locally that's going to generate the most interest. He's a 5-star, defensive lineman. Seems like one of those. You hesitate to use must get with recruiting now because you can always just go to the portal now and bring someone in who can fill a hole maybe if you miss on somebody. So I don't know what the must get guys are anymore, but if you're going to say a guy is him, a local lineman from Bosco who can play like that, like he does, feels to me like if you're going to call a guy a must get, that's it.
Absolutely. No problem calling him that must get guy.
So he's there. There's a few more defensive linemen, and then you've got some edge guys, a linebacker, and then a few interesting pieces in the secondary. I guess what stands out for you about kind of the defensive guys that were there on campus?
Well, again, you had a long shot in Anthony Hill, 5-star linebacker that we mentioned earlier from Denton, Texas, but it just kind of seems like if there was going to be a presentation over a 48-hour stretch that you are going to put out there for a long shot, I mean, I'm not sure you could have done a better job than USC did this weekend. And Anthony's father, I hit him up to just ask, what his impression was, and he just said, amazing, never seen anything like it. So, we'll see. We're supposed to talk to Anthony. It'll probably won't be until tomorrow. I want to talk to his dad too. I want to get the parents' perspective on all this too, because they go to all these visits as well. And I think they see a lot of different stuff in it from a different point of view than the kids do. So it's going to be interesting to hear what some of these parents have to say, but he would be a huge get. And I don't know who Braxton Myers was referring to, and I said, you know, there were some fellow Texans I'm hearing are looking pretty good for USC, and he said, yep. He said, looking really good. So I don't know if that was Anthony Hill or who it was, but Trey Wilson, you know, we haven't mentioned him yet, and he's a defensive lineman that, you know, we put a prediction in for him. He's just, if he's 17, he just turned 17. You know, he's about 6'4", 245 pounds. Great looking athlete, extremely bright. Would be personality wise would fit in Los Angeles very, very well. So, you know, he's the guy to keep on the lookout for potential commitment here down the road. Whether it happens this week or not, he's going to announce fairly soon.
And a Texas guy who's looking at Washington, Utah, a couple of other schools in there. So not, you know, anytime you get a good Texas kid who's seemingly not tied to staying in Texas, that you know is going to boost SC's chances right out the gate.
I mean, that's just that's one of the things I know too, because Utah was one of his other visits. So, and then you have Braylon Shelby, who we'll be talking to here later tonight. He's an edge from Friendswood, Texas, which is kind of south of the city of Houston, on more towards Galveston in that direction. Again, you know, he came to USC for this visit with a lot of interest. And the only question I was able to ask him just via text is if he planned on returning. And that's the first question I ask every single person that takes an official visit. If they say they're returning, you know, it's like, you know, something good's going to come after that with what they have to say. So he did say, I'm definitely going to be back. So, you know, that's a pretty encouraging sign from another kid from Texas. And he's a kid too. He's got some offers left in him that are going to come in the next few months from some big time schools too. So, you know, we'll see what ends up happening, but we're trying to get through this here, you know, semi-fast so I can take my phone call from Braylon Shelby. But why don't you give your take on David Peavy?
Yeah, you know, Lincoln is a school where SC has gone after guys from down there. And I think you got to get in there. I think that's a school that is building, and you can't see them all go to Oregon. I mean, that's one of those things where when you see a school kind of start digging their claws in at a program like that, I think you've got to do it. But I love at this point with this defense, I think you need to add those athletic guys out there on the edge, because that's clearly an important position. You know, the way that Alex Grinch talks about, the way that Roy Manning talks about that edge, you got to get guys that can go. And personally for me, that's a spot where I'm okay with a kind of a borderline 3-star guy with that kind of athletic upside who can move like that at that size. I don't need a guy who's filled out and all, you know, that sort of thing there. I think, again, there's a mix. You can go get a guy, a Romello Height, who, you know, has already a few years in there, and then you can build behind him. But that, for me, that's what stands out, kind of the athleticism and kind of that raw ability there. But also, like I said, from a program where it's time, you know, they're pumping guys out to the point where let's have SC grab one of those guys from Lincoln and get them there.
And Mateo wanted to, you know, he's also an edge potentially. They honestly don't know where he could pretty much play anywhere.
He play 5 or 6 spots, I think.
And he can play tight end for you know, if he wanted to do that as well. But what people are going to want to know also is that we believe that USC is the school to beat at this point. You know, there's a lot of talk about Oregon and Ohio State, maybe especially Ohio State recently, that they were ahead of USC. And I had some people tell me at Bosco that Oregon and Ohio State were ahead of USC. But after this visit, we're told that you know, they're in good shape with Mateo right now. And again, I'm going to go through this really quick in case the phone call comes in. But the other DBs that were here that are uncommitted were Micah Tees and Warren Roberson. And I've seen Warren play. Warren's a guy too. He's a lot like DeAndre Moore, where he can play on both sides of the ball. Dennis Sims actually does like him at wide receiver. So anytime you can get these DBs that can play both ways, I think that's huge, because we spent a lot of years watching USC football. You know, even Amon Marshall should have had 20 interceptions in his career at USC, and he probably ended up with 2, you know, because he couldn't catch the ball. And so I think I like the direction they're going with the DBs, a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, can play on both sides of the ball, which I think helps them with their pass coverage. But both these guys are exceptionally talented. Micah Tees is another kid that I think he is looking. He's from Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I think he's looking for a school that is high in academics. And I know USC and Notre Dame both fit that bill. So those are just a couple more guys I want to make sure that we mentioned that USC's feeling good about with after they took their visit.
Yeah, I think finding those guys with kind of either already like elite characteristics or the potential to get to elite. I think in the past, SC took a lot of guys that were very good as sophomores. And so you knew their names. And so they grabbed kind of 4-star ratings early and then kind of just carried that throughout their career, but the trajectory wasn't there. And so that's why this mix between, these big time 5-star guys and these guys that they've evaluated and say, no, we see them, we like them more because we see them in 4 years being so much better than where they are right now. I like that mix.
Christian Pierce is that guy Christian Pierce is that guy that you just described.
Yes. I think there's a handful. I think the guys who end up being kind of the 3-star guys in this class, I think it's what the big, when Alabama signs 5 3-star guys, 3 or 4 of those guys end up being phenomenal players. I mean, that's kind of how you build that class from top to bottom. And I think this point, with the way the guys that they're going after, this staff, I feel like clearly kind of gets how to fill out a class and how to go after some big time guys. Real quick, what you mentioned the guys at Nobu here on Sunday evening. Some of the things that stood out to you about kind of just what they did, what took place on the visit.
Yeah, it was impressive, even the way that it ended for some of the guys today with breakfast at what used to be the Staples Center. I can't call it anything else at this point, the crypto.com, whatever, arena. It's the Staples Center. It's where the Lakers played. So I love how they didn't even mention the Clippers in any of the social media. They're from San Diego anyway. But it was impressive on even I'll just go backwards on how everything went, because we really saw what it was like to be at the Coliseum, and on top of that, they were doing the photo shoots, but it was the former players that showed up. And when you see a picture of Mateo Wingalele with Willie McGinnis, USC's taking this real serious, because there were guys, Erik, former players. Marcus Allen was talking to Salute to Troy, and he was over at the what they called the Golden Hour or something like that, the Coliseum. They had that event going on. There were players at USC that we haven't seen in years spend as much time as they are at USC right now. So
they're excited to get back.
Yes. And some people are like, why weren't we doing that in the past? I just don't think there was enough passion for what former players were looking at to come to USC and do it. I don't think Clay Helton had much of a relationship with them anyway, but I think going to the beach, going to Santa Monica, there were every element of Los Angeles, but the ultimate was that bash at Lincoln Riley's house on Friday. Was that last night?
Yeah,
yes, Saturday night.
Friday night, I think.
Friday night. I mean,
so
these
all running together.
I mean, I'm sitting here in Houston trying to call 24 guys. I'm losing track of what day it is. But yes, Friday night. And it was interesting too, is that we really didn't know that party was going on, and we didn't know much details about what they were going to do. And I just got this innocent DM on Twitter from this woman who lives in Palos Verdes that follows us. She's a big USC basketball fan. And she sent me a note saying, there's a party at Lincoln Riley's house. The Trojan marching band is playing at sunset. There are Sprinter vans all up and down the neighborhood that have brought recruits and their families. She said it's amazing. String lights everywhere. Of course, we ended up seeing video and photos of it. But, when you talk about going to Lincoln Riley's house and having that gathering, and then the Coliseum the next day, and then you talk about Staples Center, Coliseum, and then you got tonight the finishing touches where you got Malachi, Makai, Mateo. I think they're trying to think of Deuce Robinson might be. They're all at Nobu right now, finishing out their official visits.
Why would they ever leave Norman? I don't know why Lincoln would come out here for this.
Yes, why not Norman?
All right. Well, that's the look at what we feel like is going to be the biggest recruiting weekend for USC here, and the aftermath is going to be fascinating. Already 3 fight on emojis from Lincoln Riley and the football Twitter account, and I think that's kind of
There
just
might be four, Erik. There might
four
actually
at this
be
point.
four.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
I think there was an added one.
We got to update in real time, and I think we both think that's the start of kind of what comes out of this weekend. I think they could be collecting commitments from this group from now all the way to the early signing day, actually, if people want to keep it, quiet for that long. So again, it was a big weekend leading into it, and we expect it to be big, and from everything we've heard so far, absolutely home runs in every aspect of this, from players to families, parents, all of that. Like Riley and staff hit it out of the park.